one of my favorite words is potential. And I like seeing potential everywhere. I like, even in the most difficult spaces with terrible views, I see potential. And I like to capture that potential for other people. And I think my business is working with other people. It's very collaborative. And I think potential and collaboration together can create really magical spaces.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we have conversations about power, value, and success on your own terms. I'm talking with women who are building influence, wealth, and authority, not by following someone else's playbook, but by deciding what success looks like for themselves. These are candid conversations, hard-earned perspectives, and no BS insight from women who aren't asking permission. They're setting the standard. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice. Most people call me JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today, we have Victoria Hagan. She's the founder of Victoria Hagan Interiors. Hi, Victoria. How are you?
Hi, JJ. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm thrilled to be here with you.
I am excited to be here with you, too. I mean, if people don't know who you are, they must not read like Architectural Digest or something. But so let's just tell them who you are and what you do.
I'm an interior designer. I really feel I'm a lifestyle expert. I have a business that I created, and based on design, and having a creative business, I think it always has its challenges, but I think I love helping people solve problems and live their best life. And it is very exciting.
When did you start this business?
I've been in business almost right after design school. I started working for clients. My teachers started recommending small projects to me. But so I've been in business a long time, but I think I'm always asked, when did you know you wanted to be an interior designer? And I have these memories of standing up in my crib, looking down at the floor and saying, oh, who picked this? I would have never picked this flooring. And so I've always been very aware of my surroundings and how they make you feel. So when I started off in business, I was like, I'm going to start a design business that's like no other business. I wanted a business that was not about decorating, because I grew up in a time where everything was about chintz and tassels and lots of fluff. And I didn't feel like that was real. And early on, I could see a path for myself in business focusing on the way people live and what makes them feel good, right? What makes you feel good?
I mean, that's so interesting because you're right. It's like people hear interior designer and they think aesthetics or decorating. But what do you think they fundamentally misunderstand about what you actually do?
Well, I think early on, I was almost embarrassed to say I was an interior designer, because most people think, oh, you have good taste. Oh, you do that on the side. You like to go shopping.
Well, those things can be true, but there's a plus, right?
Well, there is a plus, but I love solving problems. I like challenging problems. I like listening to people. I like creating spaces that make people feel good, and so that they can live their best life. I had a dream growing up of wanting to be an interior designer, and I kept focused on that. But when I'm working with my clients, I'm listening to all the things they say, but all the things they don't say. Like, I feel, because you're trying to give them the confidence to just trust what's inside of them and to live the life that feels good for them, not the way a trend is telling you to live. I hate trends. Anytime I hear it, I just gloss right over it, because I just think that people should not be listening to trend advice.
So you've always just had your own business.
I interned. I went to a lecture. I was in design school, Parsons, which was a very important part of my career journey. But I was studying architecture, construction, environmental design, but nothing about interiors. And I thought, well, how am I going to figure this out? And someone said, you need to be an intern. And I was very lucky. I was given three names. One woman called me back. I went for the interview. She didn't seem too impressed with my portfolio. But at the end, she saw a watercolor I had done of a flower. And she said, oh, you can render. I think you can do something here. And I just watched her and the way she spoke with clients and the way she presented herself. And I was so impressed that I would go home and tell all my friends' mothers, oh my God, this woman is fantastic. She's so talented. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I was bringing in all this work. And very quickly, this woman, Simone Feldman, said to me, do you want to become partners? And I was like, oh, that's so nice, but no, thank you. I'm going to start my own business because I want to do large projects. I want to do full, complete. I want to run a business. I don't want to do this as a hobby. And she said, that's okay. I'm game. And I was like, okay, if you're game, let's go. I said, but the problem is, how will anyone know who we are? And we figured out doing a show house was a good idea because you met all the press, you met the public, but I knew our room needed to say something. It needed to stand out. And we designed this little room. First, they said there was no room. And I said, there has to be. It was in Southampton, and it was very prestigious show house. And we called and they said, no, sorry, there's no room. And I said, there has to be some little area. And they said, well, there's a staff bathroom on the top floor. It's awful. And we went to look at it. I was like, we'll take it. We will take it. And I turned around and I saw this back stair with mops. It was miserable. And I said, is anyone doing this? And they said, no. I said, we'll take this too. And what I did was I filled in the floor, created a room, and really designed a room that was called Through the Looking Glass. And it was a perspective on how one could live with simplicity, with beautiful things. And that little room ended up being on the cover of New York Magazine. And then the business just took off. It took
So
off.
you and Simone were partners for a long time.
Yes, we were partners for about 5 years. And then she suddenly passed away. And that was traumatic. I was devastated. And I thought, how do I continue on? Because it was just the two of us. And then I felt like I was on a bicycle and I was like, you just have to keep pedaling. You have to keep working. A lot of businesses started holding back their orders from me. They said, they thought I was going to go out of business. I was in my 20s and I was like, if you don't deliver to me, I will never work with you again. Trust me, I will be around.
It sounds like, you had some of that in you already, right? Like when you said to Simone, like, I want to make this into a real business, not some little, thing on the side or whatever. And, knew that even though you were the one with the quote unquote less experience, right? And then she passes away, like, you're like, I'm still going to do this. Like, what do you think that was inside of you that made you go, no, this is like different. This is not some interior design. This is not some like hobby. This is not like a bored housewife situation. Like, this is a real business.
One of my favorite words is potential. And I like seeing potential everywhere. I like, even in the most difficult spaces with terrible views, I see potential. And I like to capture that potential for other people. And I think my business is working with other people. It's very collaborative. And I think potential and collaboration together can create really magical spaces. And I'm lucky I have amazing clients. I learned so much from them. That's a gift to be able to work with exciting, successful people. You learn. Don't you feel like you're learning every day? I learn something new every day.
Yeah, of course. But, I find, especially in industries that are dominated mostly by women, and they can be extremely underestimated, right? Especially creative ones, right? Where it's like you can't really see tangible results with an ROI, right? You know what I mean? And so it's like they're often minimized. And so it's hard to keep your own and charge what you deserve and, not back down from it. In particular, your clients are very, very high end, a lot of media people, a lot of entertainment people. At some point, you had to realize you weren't designing spaces. You were like building a company around, perspective and your judgment. Like, when do you think that happened? It seems like it happened from a very early time with you.
Well, it's interesting. I grew up, my dad was a corporate litigator, and my mother, before she had her family, was a fashion illustrator. I always say from the time I could walk, I was answering questions, I was being grilled. And today, there's no one I meet, no situation I'm in that I ever feel thrown by. You're an attorney, a litigator, right? I
I'm
mean,
not a litigator, but yes, I'm an attorney and I negotiate and I'm very aggressive.
I'd never be able to tell. You'll have to give
I'm
me some
aggressive in my
tips.
own authentic way. Like, I like nag a lot. It gets a lot done. I'm like, I'm not going away. I'm just very persistent.
But I would say I don't give up either. I think that in business, you have to have grit. You can't give up. I always laugh that I grew up swimming. And the one thing I learned about swimming is that you can't quit mid race. You have to get to the end. And in my projects, I start them and I have to finish them. You're as good as your last project. And that is not always easy for a lot of different reasons. So you have to push through the difficult times. But I feel I'm an optimistic person by nature, that I always feel just stay calm, cool, and stick to your guns. And I always say to my clients, don't worry, we're going to get lost in the forest, but I'm going to get you out. I know how to get you out. I like that wandering creative process, but I also have this like foot on the accelerator. I know where I'm going.
Did you ever have a time in your career before, realizing all of this, right? That you were questioning your fees or, if they were being questioned? Like, when did you learn to like ask for exactly what you deserve?
Well, absolutely. It's very interesting because you learn a lot, as you're building a business. And one of the things I learned early on is that when someone starts negotiating with me from day one, it's probably not a good match. And I set a fee structure that I thought was fair, and I don't negotiate. And it's easy. It's just I love what I do. My fees are fair. I think my clients get great value for the work I do because it's not just about the pieces, it's about the overall. And I stick to my guns. And when I first started, my dad being an attorney, I said, oh, Dad, I have a new client, my first client. I need a letter of agreement. I said, can you write one up for me? He said, oh, no. I said, what do you mean, no? He said, I'm going to get you an attorney. I said, I don't want an attorney. I have no problems. Why do I need an attorney? He said, Victoria, the best piece of advice I can give you is get a good attorney and a good accountant. And those two things will carry you through your business. And it was great advice because the financial side and the legal side is very, very important to get that set up. I have a simple letter of agreement, but it really does hit the bases. And, recently, and you're always having to readjust, with all the new tariffs coming out, there's always something going on that's going to impact your business. But I'm a I have very strict, simple rules and I stick with them. And that I don't know how I got to be that way when I think back on it. I just knew that if I couldn't make someone happy on day one by getting through a letter of agreement, no matter how much money they could pay me, I'm probably not going to make them happy.
Great realization, and I think a really important lesson, you know what I mean? Because so often women are not, taken seriously in business, and so we just want to take the business we can get, right? But you know what? And when you're asking somebody for that to pay you what you're worth and your value, and they're questioning it, then you're probably asking the wrong person. And it's probably not going to end well, right? And there's only one person to blame, right? It's you. Cause we do have that intuition and we know this. And like, but we feel this like, oh no, I just got to get in there and I got, and I got to like, whatever. But when you devalue yourself from the beginning, then who else wouldn't? Of course they're going to devalue you if you're devaluing yourself. And I love what your dad told you about the lawyer and the accountant. And I mean, I have my own lawyer, of course. Like there's a saying, any lawyer that represents himself has a fool for a client. And even AI, like when people try to use that, and I'm like, today a client sent me something and I was like, this is an AI contract. Like it does not protect you. What were you thinking? You know what I mean? It's like, you have me. Like you're always going to, penny wise and pound foolish. You're going to pay
It's
more
so
in the
true.
end.
Actually, that penny wise, pound foolish, I heard a lot.
Yes. When you're dealing with these really like high profile people, look, I worked with Jay-Z for 17 years. I worked with talent for a very long time. You know what I mean? They're very used to getting their way. They're very used to not getting feedback or pushback. They must have like pushed back and then ultimately like, okay, like giving you some compliments or something in the end going, okay, like you're a formidable opponent, because that's what a lot of people don't understand in business. It's like that pushback and forth, like it's actually more respected than just bowing down and taking it.
I think, that's how I have the clients I have, in that I think I'm a good listener. I value my clients' trust. I think the trust is invaluable. They spend a lot of money with me, and you don't see the result of that for a very long time. I'm creating homes and family compounds and offices, and there's a lot of money involved, and you need to be respected and trusted with that. And I feel like I'm a good listener, but I think one of my superpowers, if I have any, are that I can read a room. I know when to hold my cards. I know when to show them. Early on, I had some clients that were pretty hot, ran pretty hot, and I was petrified. But I just knew that you just need to ride the wave. As long as they stay on a professional level, I can ride that wave with anyone. And I know you're on top of the wave, you just got to bring that wave to shore, ride that wave to shore. And I think they respect you for that.
Yeah. Are you talking
And
about like taking some kind of like short-term hits for a long-term gain?
I'm willing to have some rough meetings and some difficult conversations, but I think I'm like, I just see business as you're on a team. I'm a coach on their team, and I am there to help them. And they realize that. I'm not looking to have conflicts with them. I'm helping them create the lives they dreamed of living. And that's not so easy. And I think it's challenging and it's personal. And I love that personal challenge of figuring it out, because everyone's different. That's why I hate that kind of cookie cutter, oh, this is the way you should live. And I like my clients to feel that everything is personal. So I hesitate when they say, what's your style? They call my work the new American classic. And what I think that's about, it's living a very honest, confident, comfortable life that doesn't follow the rules, just really goes with a personal, trusting that gut inside. What makes you feel good? And I'm always looking for how clients react, because whether they know it or not, I'm reading them constantly. They're like, is this a test? I'm like, no, not, but kind of yes.
So as you have grown in your business and there are trends, right? So let's get a little bit more into your actual like work, right? And you built your business. You obviously learned very quickly not to undervalue yourself or underestimate yourself, or, you wouldn't have the business that you have today. That power begets respect. So what is that? I mean, and you had a natural talent and ability for it. as you said, even when you were like standing in your crib and like, oh, these floors, and wanting to do it, like when there's all of these trends and different designs and we all see it, it's like, this is what you need in your kitchen right now, or this is in, this is out, this color's in, this is out. Like how do you deal with that with like clients who are coming in that?
I think I like to show lots of things. And, when I'm first working with someone, I say, give me 3 words to describe how you want your home to feel. I'm always looking for descriptions, feelings. And because design decisions relate to feelings. And so I'm just always trying to guide them through that. And then I try and watch the reactions. And their reactions typically, I'm like, I have this 3-second rule. And if they don't respond in 3 seconds, I'm like, out,
Well,
out.
if you're
Um,
talking to women, we're used to our feelings. You're talking to some of like even if you're a powerful female executive or a celebrity, but if you're talking to men, they don't like feelings is a weird word for them, right? So
that is true. That is true. But a word I hear all the time is comfortable, relaxed, fresh. I am doing a lot of places now where people want to feel younger. Just there's like this energy. And I think you can create spaces that really can make you feel so much different than, I'm sure for yourself, you have places that you love being
Mhm.
in. What's your point of gravity? I am always looking, what's your point of gravity? Homes have that. And figuring it out and designing for it, I think, is very exciting because that feeling of feeling connected with your life is special, and actually it can feel magical. It's something you can't put your finger on.
it's got to be comfortable, right? And like calming and not too crazy. But there's a lot of people who don't even understand that, right? So if there's somebody who just thinks that they need to hire an interior designer and think that you're just going to decorate things, like what is that transition for you to make them understand that this is like a life change, a big choice? Look, it's expensive. They know that, right? You deserve it. And there's no ROI. Like, what is that conversation? Or is there like just subtlety over the time to show the power that you bring and to the table as well?
Well, it's interesting. So much of my business is repeat. So people, my clients, they understand that there is this method. But new clients are always like maybe a little confused at first. They're like, I'll say, well, what do you like? And, I show a lot of things and they're like, no, we want to know what you like. What do you like? And I'm like, don't worry. I like everything here. I'm playing with a full
Yeah.
deck.
You're like, I brought this here. So yeah.
So I like everything. I'm just looking. And it was funny. I saw an old client and I worked with like 20 years ago. And he said, Victoria, we laugh all the time. We were young. We were like doing well in business. And we come to you and we say, please design our home. And you come into the meeting and you were like, well, what do you like? And what they're like, we don't know what we like. And you were like, no, I know. I'm going to figure out what you like. And I like to tap into that. I like to break down those barriers because when you get to that level, it feels honest and genuine. And I think sometimes interior design can create facades. I'm not interested in create facades. I'm interested in designing for real life and real people. And because when you can tap into that, so I do have a process that I think clients figure out after a while. I definitely know. I always say, like, we go dancing for a while. We just chat, we look. And then once I feel like we've gotten to know each other pretty well, I'll then dive in and give a bit more direction. But I think people in business respect a process. It's not a whim. It's not, oh, let's just give this a go. There is a process, there is a method. And I think the creative process, I think when I was in design school, it was so eye-opening to me, was a professor said, do you realize that everything you see, everything around you, every single object was designed by someone? Everything. A pencil, a post-it, a street light, everything. And I realized, yes. And in order to create spaces that make people feel good, you need to pay attention to all the tiniest of details. So I'm always going from big picture to small, to the tiniest detail, the eighth of an inch, crazy. But I'm lucky. I love what I do. Doesn't feel like work. Don't you feel that way? Don't you love what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I say that too. Like, who thought of the paperclip? You know what I mean? Who like decided I really need this thing? And in particular, like I love it when it comes out, like all the things that women like have invented, right? That like we needed, and that's what continues to happen is women build businesses that fills a need that they initially had. You know,
It's so true.
and so whenever there's all of like listing on Wi-Fi to like grocery bags to things that are all invented by women, but still we're always so underestimated, right?
I do think so. I do think still to this day, when they hear, oh, you run a design business, they're like, oh, so fun. That must be so fun. And I think the most eye-opening thing to interns and people who begin to work in my office is how much of this is really business and organization and structure. And the creative is just this little part. And I think I'm a big believer in design education. And at Parsons, I never worked harder. And I feel that hard work gives you the structure and the skills to run a business. Because, I met with someone and they were like, can I get some business advice from you? I was like, sure. And they were telling me, oh, their friends tell them they have great taste and they're running a business. And I said, I think that's wonderful. My only bit of advice to you is to be very clear that you're selling your ideas, that you're someone that's just talented with ideas because you don't have the education that goes behind it. And that can be deceiving because I do think there is a level of professionalism, and don't get yourself into trouble by pretending to be someone that's been professionally trained. In the legal profession, it's much easier. You do have to be.
Exactly. Like people don't understand. Like I know, just in working with and knowing other interior designers, like if you don't know the architecture or the permits or things that like construction, like what has to happen first, and they can be like, okay, do this, and then like something has to change or you need a permit for that. Like it all goes hand in hand in what you're doing. And so can you talk a little bit about that for people who are aspiring to do what you do, build a business?
Well, I think first off, people come to interview in my office. I'm like, just to be clear, you need to enjoy managing confetti. There are a million and one things going on, and you need to not be overwhelmed by that. You need to know that you can solve problems step by step and at multiple times and still stay focused. If you like to do one task at a time and nothing else, this is probably not the career or job for you, in particular in this office, because we run fast. Speed, time. I think what I've learned with one of the most precious things that we have in life is time.
Yeah, of course.
And clients are very focused on getting things done. And I respect that. I understand that. And that takes energy to get that done. So I am very focused on bringing good energy to the office and being willing to solve lots of different problems. Every day in my office is different. Every day is fast. Every day I feel like I have accomplished a lot. I've made people feel good. I've solved a lot of problems. But what I like doing is making it all look easy. right? Isn't
Yeah,
that
but that's something that you acquire over time, It's like, how you train people. And I love that example you said of the couple who were like, oh, we were doing so well. And like, go do my thing. And you're like, no, 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 no. That's not how it works. Like, I'm not going to design something and you hate it, right? A, it's not good for my business. B, that's not what I do. I help you solve your problems and understand that my taste is a form of power, right? And like, and this is my power and you will pay me for that, right? But I'm going to help you figure out what that is so I can help you in that.
and I do think it's easier than most people think. I don't think we've been brought up in our society to pay attention to that little voice inside.
Women in particular, our intuition, I mean, we have it, but like we're told to push it down all the time.
Push it down. Don't listen to that little voice. And I believe in that little voice. That little voice guides you at all times. And I try, that's why I have that 3-second rule. It's like quick.
Mhm.
Oh, yes, no. And, the 4 or 5 seconds, I'm like, no, I'm moving along. And they're like, no, no, wait. I'm like, no, it's okay. We're just having fun. But it is just, and I do think helping people figure out what's important. Maybe they don't know their favorite colors, but they know how they want to live their life and the way they want to spend their day. And so many of us we live in these homes that have these preconceived ideas of how we should live.
Right.
I throw them right out the window. A dining room doesn't need to be a dining room. It can be so many other
Right.
things. I know personally in my dining room, I use it as my Zoom area when I'm at home. Because I never wanted an office in my home. I always wanted an office because I thought, especially having a family, I really wanted to separate the work and family time. And I do think for women, it's challenging running a business and a family. So I've always tried to keep that line drawn. When my kids were small, I tried to pretend I did not work,
Why?
but
Why
I've
is
only
that?
went so
I think
far.
it's so important for them to see you work, but I mean,
Well, what's great is they really love what I do now and they get a kick out of it. And I think they really respect me as a businesswoman because I have built something out of something that I was passionate about. And early on, I didn't really think when you're younger, you're not sure you can build that
we're
business.
always, it's like, there's so many people are like, don't build a business around your passion. It's like, do something you're good at. I mean, your passion and what you're good at is not necessarily, the same thing. It happens to be for you. But you also, you've worked at it over the years, right?
But I also, what I tell students, and I believe in it strongly, is that every woman, everyone has skills they didn't even know they have. And it's not until you get working that you see where your strengths are. Yes, in school, I was devastated. I thought I was so artistic. I did not win the art award. I won the gym award. And the gym award, I was like, what? I'm not the best athlete. I'm the best artist. But I got the gym award because I tried. I never gave up. I kept going back, going back. I was 5'9" and I wanted to be Olga Corbett. It was a little challenging.
Well, you took your creativity in a space that works for you, right?
Yes, but I do think my creativity is just a little part of why I'm successful. I'm successful because I like solving problems. I like taking on challenges and making it look easy. And I figured out that is what I really enjoyed doing. So it was a good fit. And I think everyone has these, being a good negotiator
That's what I was going to say
is
too. Like, because you have to negotiate with so many vendors, right? And then the delivery
right.
people and making sure it's on time. And then, your clients themselves, like it's a very big negotiating career.
Well, it is. I'm constantly dealing with money. I'm constantly seeing prices, but I'm like, what? That's craziness. Out. Forget about it. They're like, oh, you think that? I said, I don't want to even present it because it's absurd. So It's having, and I think my clients trust my common sense, my my value system. I think everyone I work for has means, but because you have means doesn't mean you always want to buy the most expensive. You want value, right? So it's being understanding and listening and realistic. You know, do you need to spend money on that? Sometimes yes, but sometimes no.
I know. I live in Tribeca on Reed Street, and I'm seeing a lot of deliveries from that brand. I think it's Quince, Quince, that is
Yes,
now doing furniture. And I was like, yeah,
yeah,
like the apartments surrounding me are very valuable. And they're like, and they're
yes.
like, yeah, I'm going to put in this $500, chair instead of the $5,000 one that so I
It,
get it. Okay. So I have a couple more questions. Cause I know we're running out of time. Do you negotiate everything yourself or do you have somebody do it for you?
no, I have someone who runs my
Yeah.
office. I hear every conversation every step of the way, but I typically I have some clients that like to try and do it, you know, have conversations with me about money. I think it's a better use of my skill set to have somebody else handle it.
The other thing is because it puts a barrier between you and them, right? So there's always somebody like a bad cop. As a lawyer, we're always the bad cop. We get thrown under the bus all the time, right? I'm totally fine with it. I've been run over a million times by the bus. But also it allows you then if there's something that you really need or want, then you can go in and be like, look, I'm gonna step in here. This is like whatever. And it kind of shuts it down and negotiate.
It's so
Yeah.
true. It's so
Yeah.
true.
Another question, is there ever a time that you really felt like, this was just too much? It was overwhelming having your own business with your family, and just like, it's just not worth it. Maybe, being a woman or just being called a decorator.
I think there was a time where my business was growing and I realized I could take my business from 25 people to 100 people.
Hmm.
I could. I could bring in all that work. I could do it. And what I realized was for me in my business that there was a happy medium. I need to be involved in my clients come to me and I need to be able to be in touch with them and the process. So building a business of 100 people, that when it got too big, my office did get a bit bigger, but I pulled it in. We run about 25 consistently. We have a team structure, senior people, more junior people, and we create teams on each project. And I like to make sure that I'm involved. But my business and my licenses that I have, I enjoy because I'm able to give my creative input and then someone else is selling the product. So they're two different sides of my business, the product division and my interiors side of the business.
Right. Because it is harder, when you're building a business and people want you, right?
Right.
And it can be harder. It doesn't mean you can't grow. It doesn't mean you can't make money. Sometimes a business with 25 people makes a lot more money than 100, right? Especially with technology and ways that to help it. And it doesn't make it any less successful, right? And like just things don't have to
Right.
keep going and going and going. Sometimes it's enough, right?
But I think along with the way I edit in my work, it's really focusing on your office
Hmm.
structure and the important parts of your office structure and making sure you hire the best people for those positions and always having a younger, more junior level that is growing to become
Yeah.
senior. I would say half of my senior staff came in as
Yeah.
interns. And for me, it's been a great way of hiring people who understand our work
Yeah.
culture. Because people say, oh, they worked at Victoria Hagan. Oh, that's a tough office to work in. And I actually think it's a really fun place to
Yeah, but
work.
it
But
should be. It should be hard. Why, you know what I mean?
um,
You expect a lot from yourself. You expect a lot from like, of course it should be hard, you know?
I
Doesn't mean it's not fun.
I,
Much
I,
more.
I think it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. I think it's a lot of fun, but we are structured in that way. But that's why I do like having collections that people who are not my clients can tap into the aesthetic and buy pre-vetted pieces and a point of view. I think they like to tap into that. And because I believe in a timeless aesthetic that's classic, but is always moving forward. I think you can mix things and do not play by the rules, but to not make mistakes. And I think I give my clients that confidence and the general public on my products that they're not going to make a mistake by purchasing that. And I think that's a good feeling.
All right. I know I have to let you go, but we always ask one more question. We ask this one consistent question of everybody, and that is, what's the worst advice you've ever received?
I think the worst piece of advice I've ever received was to play it safe.
I know women always get this one. Always.
And I realized though that terrible piece of advice was probably the best piece of advice, because I realized how bad it was at the time. Because I realized in success, you need to take chances. You need to push yourself past that comfortable place. You need to look at things differently and experiment. And if you don't push yourself and take risks, the rewards aren't so great. So, I'm always up for a challenge. I'm always looking to push things, see things differently, because playing it safe, yes, maybe you don't get into trouble that way, but I don't think you can make a difference playing it safe. And I like feeling like I make a difference.
Obviously. All right. Well, thank you so much. If people want to find you, how do they do that?
Well, I'm on Instagram, Victoria Hagan Interiors on Instagram, and that's where they find me.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
This has been so much fun.
Good. I'm glad. And to everybody listening to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business, thank you. And until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Taking Care of Lady Business podcast. When you travel for work or internationally, the real question isn't if something could happen, it's whether you've planned for it. That's why I'm a member of MedJet and have been for years. If your security is threatened or you're hospitalized while traveling, MedJet can get you home and to the hospital you choose, not just the closest one. It's not travel insurance. It's about not leaving critical decisions to chance. If you travel regularly, it's worth having in place. You can learn more at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. If this was useful, subscribe and share with a friend. Make sure to check out the show notes for more on my guest and me, Jennifer Justice. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC. See you next time.